Namaste. Welcome to Satsang today. It's good to be back here, wherever here is, wherever the body is, in Satsang with you all. And as always, I just want to start with looking at why we attend Satsang and what the purpose of Satsang is, because it might be a word that some of us are unfamiliar with, as it was for me when I first began. And Satsang really simply means to gather together in the truth, together near the truth, to be with truth, to be the truth. And the truth is that there's only one being, there's only one intelligence, there's only one self appearing as all of this sentient and insentient form, and not appearing as its invisibleness. It is intangible and invisible in one aspect, and then it is tangible and visible in another aspect. And it can be both of those. It can show up in both of those ways. And Satsang is to come to experience that, not just to know about it, so that we're not adding more concepts to our already very, very full bag of knowledge, things we think we know. In fact, awakening, Satsang, could be the opposite of that, letting go of what we thought we knew. Not because that's wrong, it's just, it's going to keep us in duality. And again, duality isn't a real thing. It just seems to be. It seems to be. The one self can appear as two, or many, or none at all, as unmanifest. It can pull all of that off at the same time. It is so awesome. It is what you are already. To come to experience it and then to live from that place is the goal of every human being, whether they realize it or not. And whether we realize it or not, we're all in Satsang. We're just able at this point in our evolution to see that consciously and work with it. And eventually come out of all suffering. And that's what I wanted to look at today. How do we come out of all suffering? And how long does that take? Because that was the question that was on my mind for a lot of the time when I was desperately, desperately seeking and trying to find a way out of suffering. And the answer to that, of course, is it takes as long as it takes to be yourself, the self. So in this moment, if you are living authentically, you will not be able to suffer. If instead in this moment you're trying to be something other than you are, then for whatever reason that is, then you'll be suffering. Any resistance to this moment or to what you are, because they are the same thing. This moment, where is this moment? If we look, we can't find it, we can't point to it. We know it's here. All this phenomenal activity, these words are happening inside it, arising out of it. But if we actually look at where this moment is, we can't really say it's here or over there. It's here, but not in a geographical sense, this moment. It's exactly the same as what you are. It is your unmanifest aspect, your invisible formlessness. This moment is here and cannot be defined where it is. It can't be defined at all. And for me to begin to live as that meant examining more closely who I actually am. What is this moment? What is it? What is it made of? Where is it? Is it changing? Are there a sequence of moments like mine says? Or is it just something that's here and continuous? And then to examine what I am not even closer, even more closely. The idea that I am a someone running around inside this moment, trying to get to some future moment where I will feel better than I do right now was the main driving force behind all seeking. And I just want to offer an invitation here today to stop doing that. If it's clear to you that trying to change yourself into a more awakened version of you hasn't really worked, then there's an openness in that moment to stop trying to move towards something. And because in doing so, we move away from this moment. You can't really move away from this moment because you are this moment, but it seems like we're less and less focused on what is here. So how do we put the brakes on the seeker? How do we stop the momentum of seeking? Well, can we just sit here in and as this moment and be curious about what it is? So taking that energy that wants to move towards something and just gently refocusing in it on what's already here. If this moment for you is unsatisfactory in any way at all, it's only that. And that includes your outer experience, your inner experience, your recognition of who you are. It's only that we haven't gone deeply enough into what this moment is. If we dive deeper into it, we'll find it contains everything we could ever need, an infinite supply of everything. Resources, peace, quiet, understanding, epiphanies, everything. Most of all, it will be completely impossible to suffer. Suffering doesn't mean an absence, not suffering rather, doesn't mean an absence of negative emotions, thoughts, maybe physical pain, financial pain, relationship pain. It means that we're not resisting those things. Suffering comes from resisting what is. And it's separate to actual pain, whether that's mental, physical, or emotional. Completely separate. And in this moment, we can be with what is. We don't have to like what is, but we can accept this is how this moment is showing up. So we're going to practice this. We're going to do a little meditation together if you want to. And we're just going to practice going deeper into this. So for me, this movement of moving forward was clear. It's just I'm never arriving at the place I'm trying to get to. No matter what I seem to achieve, it never felt enough because it was coming from this sense of self that was feeling very deficient. Instead, I can turn my attention to what is here already as me. What I already am. This moment is just a name I'm giving to what you really are, what I am, what everything is. And it doesn't matter so much about the name, it's about the experience. Let's dive into that now. So with your eyes open or closed, whatever you want to do, as long as you're comfy, you can sit for 15, 20 minutes. We're just going to ask this question to start off. What is here right now? Because our assumption otherwise will be that this moment is not enough. It isn't the answer to everything. So let's just begin by taking a few nice deep breaths. Inhaling, exhaling at your own pace. But as you inhale, let's allow our belly to move as well. Diaphragm in the belly. Not forcing anything, just not only chest breathing. Let's take a full and rich inhale. Exhale whenever you're ready. Squeezing gently in the diaphragm area. Just to finish the exhale, just gentle squeeze. Take another couple of deep breaths. If you can, just breathing through your nose only. If you can't, it's okay. And just breathing with the whole of your lungs, not just chest breathing. Your belly and your chest should move when you breathe. Through fear and other things, we've lost that, but we can cultivate it again. And then just letting the breathing go on by itself. Just being here. Here in this satsang, here in this body, here in this moment. If we're going to be in satsang together, let's really be here, whatever that is. We don't need to know what that is. We can gently ask a question every now and again. What is this moment? In your mind, we'll have lots of answers to that. There might be emotions, restlessness, wondering if we're doing it right, all of those things. Just letting them be. Just being curious about yourself, this moment. This moment is what you are. You're not a someone trying to stay in the moment. That's just a thought. What is this moment? Just curiously. No need for any answers at all. Just using this question as a way to dive deeper into the experience of now. What is this moment? Allowing it to help you to just stop and be here, even a little bit, slowing down, more interested in what's already here. Maybe we've never really dived deeply into now. Bringing that seeking energy into this moment, turning it into curiosity about what is. Have we fully imbibed the richness of this moment? deeper and deeper past the thought answers, mind answers of what this moment is, beyond the sensations, emotions. Just curious, what's underneath all that? Just curious. And if at any point you get lost, just coming back to this question, what is this moment? whatever this moment is for you, however it's appearing. And just noticing the ever-changing parade of shapes appearing and disappearing, thoughts, emotions, sensations, the gross, tangible forms, energy. And all of that is appearing inside this mystery. Whatever this moment is, we don't really know. But by bringing attention to the mystery of it, you find a peace, a quietness. Every time we bring our attention back to this moment, this moment that is beautifully unknowable, we'll feel a sense of freedom. You are not a phenomenon, an object arising in this moment. You are this moment. This moment is eternal and endless, stable. It is unaffected by the presence or absence of forms. This is what you are. So if you want to, whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes, have a stretch. You don't have to. You can stay like this. You can even be like this with your eyes open. In the mystery, deep in the mystery of whatever this is. And please don't make the mistake of thinking, I know what this moment is. I have no idea what this moment is. I am just so in love with the mystery of it, of what I am. I wouldn't want to know. Would you swap a final phenomenal answer for this? So suffering stops when we bring attention to this. And any time we find that we're suffering, it is only the attention is moved back to some phenomenon or some future moment where we feel things will be better than they are right now. The only reason that they're not how we want them to be is because we're denying this moment in its fullness and its richness. You're denying yourself in your fullness and your richness. So even if we move out of meditation into the Q&A now, can you be this moment still while the bodies are talking? Can you be the mystery? That which does not know. In the separate sense of someone or the seeker is just a shape appearing inside you. And it can do whatever it wants to do. So I have two questions that have been sent in. I'll answer these two questions, and then if anyone would like to ask a question here, I'll take up to four questions online here today. Feel free to raise your hand. I'll come to you after this. Dear Helen, is awareness just another no thing appearing? Why are people saying you are awareness? That's not true in my direct experience. Awareness doesn't belong to anyone or anything. Who would that one be? And that I, that is just not findable, was not replaced by anything else. So no one is aware at all. No one could ever be aware of wholeness. How can you say awareness is everywhere? So I am everywhere. To me, awareness is just wherever this body is. There is no awareness on the other side of the room in direct experience, unless I walk into that room. Awareness is wherever the body is. It is like knowing. Awareness still is personal experience, even if it's without a story. In deep sleep, I don't have any option to be aware at all, not even of nothing. I agree that there is no knowledge of where my awareness starts and someone else's begins. That would just be an assumption, and that would be anyway. Thus it would be anyway, excuse me. Or is it just the word awareness that can get confusing here, because actually it is nothing appearing as everything. Definitely it's not what I or anybody is. To be honest, I feel awareness is that what creates separation I am aware of. And that makes two. And there has to be an I to be aware of. This I is just completely illusory. There is no I that could be aware of something. And methods like self-inquiry always start with an I and end with an I am. And end with I, because the feeling of existence and that energy that goes to search is the I. Thank you. So I think we could interchange the words awareness, consciousness. You've used the word existence here. Nothing. You've said here, is awareness just another no thing appearing? Can there be another no thing? How many no thingnesses can there be? If you take something that isn't tangible, it's totally intangible, totally insubstantial, how can you separate it? And you've pointed to that here. You've said, I agree there's no knowledge of where my awareness starts and someone else's begins. Would it be an assumption though? If I can prove awareness is here in my direct experience, which it is, I'm aware of what my mouth is saying right now, I'm aware of what my eyes are seeing. So awareness is here. If I can prove awareness doesn't have a capacity to stop, because it's not a thing we could pick up and move. It has a size and a shape. But the no thingness, where does that end? Can it end? So if awareness is present, and we can prove that it does not end, we can do that in our direct experience now. We can look, can awareness actually stop? And does it appear and disappear? And we'll come to see that it's not an object. Awareness isn't an object. It's not my awareness, and that there can be no I am aware of. That very statement is false. We think that when we've seen awareness to be our real self, that we can still say, I'm aware of thoughts, and it's true. I'm aware of. Whatever comes after of, the word of, is false. I'm aware. I'm awareness. Awareness is the I. There's no object that's arisen out of awareness called a thought or a sensation or a human body that we can be aware of. That's just a very well agreed upon illusion that we all sustain within each other. People say, I've seen what I am, and what do I do about my thoughts now? And it's like, well, have a look again and see, does awareness see thoughts? Does consciousness or presence, beingness, God, self, Parabrahman, whatever you want to call this, whatever it is, whatever the name, we've been using the name now, this moment here today. Can you be aware of something? Is there really something arising in this moment? Can you find where this moment stops and a thought begins? Can you find that actual point? Can you find where your awareness of your hand stops and the hand starts? If you really look, don't just assume it's a hand, and you really look. Where does awareness stop? There's no awareness of, there's only awareness. That awareness is infinite and indivisible, appearing as all of this. And if it's easier for you to use the word nothingness, then great. But just to this first sentence, is awareness just another no thing appearing? There can't be more than one nothingness. That which is not an object exists everywhere simultaneously and can't be divided. It is that in which all objects seem to appear. So just checking out that first sentence, is awareness another no thing appearing? There can't be another, and it can't be appearing or disappearing. It just is. It is the invisible, silent, intangible background which we largely ignore, and all attention goes to what's the shape that it's taking. It's taking the shape of this body, this question, these words, all of it, right? So hopefully that gives you something to work with, and if not, just please write back in where you get stuck on that. Hi, Helen. Thank you so much for all your helpful videos. I'm very grateful I found a teacher like you. Thank you very much. I've been having difficulties with the contemplation technique. The strongest thing in me is hatred. I hate a lot of people, including my neighbors. Every day I think about how much I hate them, and that leads me to thinking about all the other people I hate. I understand there is a deep-seated hurt behind the hatred. Hating others is painful because it is against our nature. I don't see hatred being discussed in the spiritual community, probably because it's an uncomfortable thing to admit. The question I've been using is, I hate everyone. Is it true? In brackets, I don't hate everyone, but this is what the hatred inside me says. I would really appreciate any guidance on this. Thank you so much. And let me start by saying I've discussed my own self-hatred that used to run my entire existence many, many times. There were times when I thought I hated other beings too. And what I find interesting about this, though, is you point to the fact that you know there's some hurt underneath it. And yet all the attention is going to the thoughts about hating. So if I was in your position, and I have been, I would put more attention on the hurt underneath than the hatred itself. The hatred here is like a stone that the mind is throwing in the bush, trying to stop you from finding the real root of this. What is that hurt about? Because as a separate being, an apparent separate person, an object, as someone, there's no way to resolve that hurt because it seems very real. So we find ways unconsciously to avoid looking at what we really need to look at because we haven't been able to do that as the infinite self. So bringing that courage to look at the hurt and being more interested in that than the hatred. What if this is just a smokescreen? Because you clearly see that it's not the authentic real nature to hate. Who is there to hate anyway, including yourself and others? And you even said here, I don't hate everyone. But this is what the hatred inside me says. So let that be, and you bring more attention to you and this hurt. Because I think you're going to discover something very profound when you look at that. hatred and anger and all that projection, usually, at least for me and people I've worked with, is just a way to take attention away from here and put it out there. If there's people out there that I'm having a problem with, I don't really have to have the time or energy to look in here. So we can make an intelligent choice to go right to the root, and this hatred, which is only a defense mechanism against looking deeper inside, will begin to fall away. You'll see. So turning attention inside, not outside. I know it's slightly inside here. You're asking, why is this hatred going on in here? But further inside than that, what's underneath that hatred? I'd be very interested to see what's under there. And that all anger and hatred is really just the defense, right? You can see animals do it. They puff themselves up in trying to look bigger, and our anger and hatred is usually something like that. So we'll go to Robert when you're ready.
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
Yeah, basically, sort of to preface this, I tend to, as a way of, if you will, eroding or melting the ego into this, have a approach of using the sort of statement of catching myself if I'm in personhood, which I guess is what you class as the egoic state, and then this, which is ultimately what you're pointing to, I guess, this all-inclusive oneness.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm, for instance, wanting to understand, trying to analyze, control, all these different things that I associate that I need to have safety to feel to be okay being in what is already happening anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of choose between the two. Now, some people say to me, well, actually, that can be a bit, you're almost not including the person, which I guess I am. The body, should I say, is included in this, but I don't get so involved. It's very much a sort of standing off, but it can seem very, which I guess is ultimately empty or emotive. And especially applying that within a relationship seems quite tricky. So I don't know whether there's a level of detachment involved or actually it is just the reality. And the reality is that it is sort of neutral and there's maybe a transitional period where sort of one operating system of the person goes offline and the new sort of open, holistic sort of mindset sort of comes into play. And so he's trying to firstly understand if that is a legitimate approach or if I'm actually negating elements I shouldn't be. So if there's a pull to try to understand or get a grasp on something, some people say, or anxiety, say in the morning, people just say, that's just part of what is, let it be. But it can end up perpetuating itself. So I seem to take more of a proactive approach of like, well, that isn't me, not in the ultimate sense, but it isn't me. It's a habit, and
Yeah.
I'm getting lost in it, and almost wanting to step off it and go, well, actually, I just want to rest in an open, all-inclusive rather than isolating. Whereas I worry as well whether that will remain in the background because I haven't focused on it and dissolved it almost. So I'm kind of wondering if I need to, it's all right to sort of take this open approach, and that by doing so, I'm not avoiding things, I guess, really, that actually I've got to sit with anxiety, I've got to sit with depression, I've got to sit with all these thoughts and feelings, or actually if it's just noise and there's a high consciousness, well, I can see that. So why get involved in it almost?
Yeah. It's there's just a little misconception here that I just want to point to, and that is,
Sure.
I think what's causing the challenge, and that is that there's a misconception in most beings, as there was in myself, that if I just be this moment, as we were doing before, that I'm not going to if some emotion arises, some anxiety, as you said, as example, I'm just going to ignore that or bypass it, and it will just keep coming back forever then. So what I want to point to is the idea that it's one or the other. So there's an idea that I can be this moment and just rest in this openness, or I can really look at this emotion and see what it needs to tell me and, be with it, see if there's a message. For me, anxiety was I'm not safe. Um, and at first they seem to be two very different things. But if we look at what this moment is, or awareness, or whatever we want to call the real self, it is not only the space in which all things appear, but it is appearing as each shape. So it's appearing as anxiety, as you also pointed to. And in that, there's an intimacy. And sometimes the nowness, the awareness will be moved to really look at what that fear, that anxiety is, like to really be curious about it. Like it'll have, this word isn't perfect, but it has its
Yeah.
moods, right? So sometimes the nowness will just be fear is here, it's totally okay, totally okay. And sometimes it will be, what is this about actually? Let me look at it, not from the mind's space of
Yeah.
why is this still happening, but you get a sense of it, right? Sometimes it will want to deeply go into something and investigate it and come out the other side. Sometimes it will just want to let something totally be. And it has all those capacities as a human being and 100 million more.
Mm.
The real challenge here is the tiny remnant of a separate self that's trying to decide what to do in any moment,
Yeah,
right?
well, that's almost like the catch-22 is that actually, am I perpetuating something by even asking this question in the first place? Because would that fall into the category of what I describe as person versus this, and that actually the this wouldn't ask that question in the first place because it doesn't need to. It's just I know as a means to getting somewhere it might be a stepping stone,
Mhm.
but ultimately it's like, well, actually is that coming from a place of fear? And if it is, then it's probably it is the ego as opposed to this
Yeah.
loving oneness. Then actually, it's almost a case of it's a pointer rather than something to be explored. It's like, oh, my attention is on this fear-based thing, which means I'm not aligned with truth or from the heart, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's more a case of actually, I've got two choices. I'm either aligned with truth or I'm a separate person. And it's using these little indicators to go, oh, I'm off track.
Yeah. Yeah.
Myself back into that universal oneness, if you will, aligning, well,
Yeah.
removing the veil and aligning with truth. And almost it doesn't need to go any deeper than that. It's just like, oh, there's if you will, a bumper on a bowling lane, which would be associated with separate self, or put myself back on track to this sort of oneness, as it were. Well, what is, you know?
Yeah. It's for me it was about sort of letting go of expectations about what the oneness is. Um,
Mm.
for a long time, it seemed to want to meet fear with just love. And then for another time, it would deeply want to investigate, some intense inquiry would go on. And then another time, it would just, the fear just wouldn't be relevant at all. It would just be there, like another table in the
Yeah.
room, so to speak. And it showed me that it will do whatever it needs to do in that moment. I'm saying it, I mean I,
Yeah.
but I don't know what that is before it happens. I don't know what shape it's going to take. It might take the shape of some inquiry, but that inquiry could be done as a separate person or as the infinite self.
Mm.
So the infinite self will do the inquiry to really find out what fear is and come to recognize, oh, it's just me appearing this way. A separate sense of a someone is going to inquire, why is this still here? Why hasn't it gone away?
Mm.
So whatever practice does or doesn't arise or strategy arises, it's just where am I doing it from is more important than what I'm doing. Who am I doing it
Yes,
as, right?
absolutely. Yeah. And like I was saying, it's almost that using it as a an indicator of, oh, I just need to take my proper position in this
Yeah.
to experience whatever is. Just I don't want to take up too much time, but just on the back of that, the notion that I always, again, it could well play into what we're saying, that there's the questioner asking these questions in the first place around self-love. And I know it's not a case of, oh, look at me, I'm so funny, I should love that aspect and all this kind of thing. It's more of a holistic, but it allows me to sort of focus slightly if I bring it back into my body to start with. And I know you don't discuss other people's teachings and stuff, but to put it into context, Eckhart Tolle sort of said, if you can't go from negative state to presence, loving yourself or the body can be a stepping stone to sort of more acceptance. And I think I keep trying to dodge this sort of intermediary phase, perhaps, and go from like, oh, I'm like this, but I need to be up here almost. But for me, it feels good to love myself, as in literally come inside and be just like, oh, this is enough. I don't need to get validation from outside or things
It's a
coming out.
huge part of it, right? For me, being the oneness, being the no thingness was initially a way to avoid this body and mind and everything that seemed to be going wrong with it. But
Yeah.
it is so total and complete in its love that it just eventually, you must look at this. You must come to actually like the individual, unique way that I'm appearing. So the things I like, the things I do as my body and mind, I absolutely had to come back around to that. And it will keep bringing you back around to that until
Right.
you're
Yeah.
avoiding, right?
Mm.
And coming to a point where you feel totally at home in your human life, the ups and the downs and everything. It
Yeah,
will
because I
keep
guess that
bringing you
ultimately
back.
is where the conflict is.
Yeah, it's the
In
only
the
place.
sense
Yeah,
it's within, as it were, if we're just talking on a human plane, it's within. Whereas if there's a loving of what I am, that removes that conflict ultimately.
yeah.
The only thing I get concerned about is that I almost get, dare I say, too happy with that, and that suddenly I don't care about what's going on outside or other people almost. It's like, and again, being in a relationship, it's like,
It's
oh,
not it's not going to happen though, because that sense of
yeah,
deeply caring about yourself is just going to expand to encompass all manifestation.
right, okay,
So,
that's great.
because there aren't any other beings to care about,
Yeah.
but the mind says, "Oh, you should be caring about other beings."
Yeah.
The oneness, just it becomes clear that that's all of existence, right?
And I guess ultimately as well, those other beings or whatever, that's all happening within me as well. Literally, like I only recognize them inside me, or I hear them inside me, or
Exactly. Yeah.
whatever. So if I'm okay with all that, it's there.
Yeah. And
Okay.
people say to me, "I've seen what I am," but they're still hating their own body and mind.
Right.
No,
Okay.
you haven't really seen, like, why can you can't really exclude
Yeah.
one body and mind and say that you're being living as the infinite self.
Mm.
That's the thing it'll keep pushing you towards, and that's what we're
Right.
hinting at here, right?
This is the bit that does feel good for me, but my mind says, no, 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 it can't be that simple.
Mm.
You've got to be
And
everything.
because to get to that point, we've had to spend a lot of time focusing only on the unmanifest aspect of the self,
Mm.
that it feels like a little counterintuitive at first to start to put attention back on the form.
Mm.
But when we realize the form is the formless, it is the awareness, then you really can't not do that, right? You've got to fall back in love with everything that it means to be the individual expression of that self.
I guess I've been very lost in the what people would call the masculine of just sort of knowing, and I've not been very much in the sort of loving and feeling element, as it were.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and I think that's maybe where I need to come back to then.
That naturally for me, it sat in the formlessness for a while. Like, this is a nice place to hang out. But then there was this deep, irresistible urge to come back into, these words aren't really true, come back
Yeah,
into
yeah, yeah,
the station, but you get the idea, where it just wanted to embrace all the things it couldn't embrace when I thought I was a separate self. You say the wrong thing, you do the wrong thing, you make a mistake, you do something embarrassing, whatever, right? And just to
Mm.
fall in love with all of that.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Sorry, I've taken a lot of time, but thank you very much
It's a
indeed.
good question. It's a good subject that everyone needs to hear, myself included, right? So
Mm.
thank
Great.
you.
Well, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Christine?
Helen.
Hi.
Hi. So Well, thank you for the meditation. That was great. I think what you mentioned just earlier would like resonate a lot. Like while I'm not like while I'm in this space, this whatever it is, right, that moment, that's remnant of self, I think you called it. It wants to like, I could see it like come up, wants to claim it, wants to be absorbed in it, wants, and while I like could go back to that space, it feels like it's then not complete, because there's still this like wanting, or maybe it's the doer of wanting to just like be like absorbed in it.
It was a place I got stuck for a very long time, having had a few glimpses of that beautiful nowness, whatever it is, my real self. Then there was this kind of separate sense of self that so desperately wanted to disappear into that, to merge into it, to be absorbed, to become it, whatever, I thought I tried so hard to make that happen. And finally it just dawned on me that that's just not possible. If there isn't a separate self now when I look, then and I only find this moment and a body and some words, then all my attempts to merge back into that are just emphasizing a sense of separation that doesn't exist. And it's one of those weird things about devotion to truth, that devotion of the separate sense of self, it has to reveal itself to be the infinite self recognizing itself. So nothing happens in that. Nobody gets merged, nobody disappears, nothing gets annihilated. As if for a long time I was fearing this terrible end to the separate self, that it was gonna for something. But it's really not there other than a bunch of thoughts, emotions, and contractions in the body, right? When I look for it, I can't find it still. Never found it. It's just using the intelligence that we have to just go, can I ever actually achieve that? And do I need to? If it never was to. And of course, something inside is so devoted to truth that it really wants to make sure we are completely being this as much as we can. But is that even something you can fail at? Can you be any more yourself than you are right now in this moment? Mind will say, yeah, well, I can get rid of this and this and this and this and this, but aren't they just shapes appearing inside you? Even the sense of a someone that's desperately trying to disappear. It's just a sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I see it. It's like a shape, and then I like, I know I'm watching it, but it's, yeah, I guess it's like the persistence of just like feeling like because it keeps coming, maybe it's just the identification with it.
Yeah, but the one that's trying to stop identifying with it is also it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to say that again?
I got that.
Good. So something's trying to get rid of it, do something with it, help it find peace. That's also another aspect of it. So all you can truthfully say to me is that you're just watching it. Can you do anything about it? And do you need to? It was my thing for a while. It's like, when is it going to disappear? I've seen that it's not me. When is it going to stop doing its thing? Chasing its tail, trying to find this thing called awakening. And in the end, something just kind of fell in love with it. It's like, there's just another shape I can make. I mean, I didn't need it to go. It was actually even, like a curious little pet in the end. It's like, oh, there it does, doing its judgy thing again or something. It just kind of stopped happening somehow. I don't really know when or where, don't really care too much. Because you're not really that bothered if someone takes a table and moves it to the side of the room. Yet we give so much specialness to this separate sense of someone, which is just a sense, not an actual thing, a sensation. So it just becomes something that's, it's fine if it never goes. And then of course it's nothing sustaining it then, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Melanie? Can you hear us, Melanie, if you're ready?
Yeah, I'm just unmuting.
No worries.
I used to do a meditation called Aware of Awareness, but from your talk today, it seems like that, and that meditation never made sense to me, because it seems like from today, when I have a thought, the idea is to fall back into awareness, not to be aware of awareness.
To just
Is
be
that aware of?
Yeah.
So would that be like a better thing to do? To feel the thought
It
and
depends who,
relax into awareness?
yeah. It depends who's being aware of awareness. Right. I can really think I'm as someone aware of the awareness, or I can recognize awareness is all there is. And we could call that being aware of awareness or being awareness, but they're really the same thing ultimately, right? It's not me looking at awareness. There's just awareness when I look in my direct experience. No person tuning into it or trying to find it. And in the end, they both become the same thing. Just being aware of the awareness that I am is awareness looking at itself rather than thinking I'm a someone looking at awareness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just thought what you had said after the word of would be like a phenomenon, or that it would be different to just be in it than
Yeah.
to be aware of it. I don't
So
know.
it starts off feeling like I'm aware of awareness. I'm spending time in meditation being aware of awareness. It starts off like that, and it feels like a someone who's being aware of the awareness, right? The great awareness. But that dissolves gradually through the meditation process and through self-inquiry to just the recognition that there is only awareness. And it's looking at
Okay.
itself, that kind of resolves in that. We all start off with that dualistic sense. I'm listening to the silence, or I'm conscious of the consciousness, or I'm resting in the stillness. But then it becomes I'm resting as stillness, or consciousness is conscious of itself. We can use lots of different words, but a sense of separation just becomes less and less important.
Okay. So it eventually becomes like you just fall back or relax into awareness.
Yeah, because
You have the thought.
you
Okay.
see that awareness is infinite eventually, right? And it just becomes clear, how could I be looking at it from somewhere? There isn't really anywhere where awareness isn't that I could be standing to look at it. I can't be an object then. It becomes clearer. If I'm not an object and there's only one no thingness, no one awareness, that just gets clearer, right? As we falling back into awareness is a good phrase, but ultimately a stepping stone, I guess, to there is only awareness.
Mm. Thank you. And the other thing I've heard it said that when you have pain, just to be in the sensation, get into the sensation with no thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and then you don't have suffering. Could you elaborate on that? Because I don't really understand it.
So normally if we experience something unpleasant, it could be a emotional pain or physical pain, what we try to do is think about that thing. So let's take the example of physical pain. Something in my body is hurting. The very next thing I'm going to do is, as a separate being, apparent separate being at least, is try to think about how to deal with it. What can I do about it? And, do I take this medicine, or what do I do? Do I go see this person? And added to that is all the ways that we've dealt with physical pain in the past, all kind of comes flooding back, which ones worked, which ones didn't. And we think that suffering is physical pain, but suffering is always and only coming from rejecting what is. So it's our rejection of the pain that makes us suffer. So if we look at how a painkiller or a pain pill works, temporarily it stops us resisting that pain. It's still there, we just don't care about it so much, right? You take a pill for a headache or something, headache doesn't immediately disappear, you just don't care about it so much, you can't push against it. Are you with me so far, yeah?
Yeah.
So if we can learn not to resist the pain, then we don't need to be suffering, even while intense physical pain is there. They're two different things, suffering and pain. And so how do we resist pain? Well, it's actually by thinking about it. Pain is unpleasant, of course. Nobody's ever going to say, you know, I love physical pain. Least of all, an awakened being isn't going to say that either. But it became clearer to me that when I think about something, it feels separate to me. And I'm actually suffering from the division that I seem to have created between me and it. And there is a world of difference in experiencing I'm in pain and I'm appearing as pain. If we don't resist the pain by thinking about it, we can just begin to directly experience it. It's a sensation, an intense sensation that we won't be able to suffer by doing it like this. The thoughts about the pain are only how to stop suffering anyway, right? We think we have to get rid of the physical pain to stop suffering. But that's an impossible loop. It goes on forever. Instead, I can be as curious as possible as to what this pain is. Still don't like it. Nobody's ever going to like physical pain. But I can be curious. What actually is it? What is it to directly experience it without thinking about it? Can you get a sense of it?
Yeah. So it's better to think I am appearing as pain
Not even
than
that
I am in
thought.
pain.
It's just a stepping stone, that just whatever, and you can do it with, you can practice with any phenomenon at all. What is my hand? Or what is a cloud? Or what is a thought? Practice just being gently curious about what it is. If you practice with phenomena you like, first of all, what is joy? What is, you know, a particular person that you like? You're moving away from thinking about something and you're moving more into directly experiencing that thing. So that when pain does arise, then you've practiced a little bit how to be inquiring into it, curiosity. Inquiry is just curiosity, right? What actually is pain, and have I ever experienced it without thinking about it? And to my amazement, I had to admit, no, I don't actually. I only know the experience of physical pain with a lot of thoughts about it. I've never just felt pain. And by going into it as much as we can, something won't want to do this inside, of course. You might find that pain even disappears itself. Even if it is still there, you won't be able to suffer from it at all. It'll be just another sensation happening in the body.
So if I'm feeling pain, I would just go into it without any thoughts. Just feel the intense.
Try to bring some curiosity to it, like what actually is this? Because the moment the pain starts, notice the assumption, I know what this is, and I need to get rid of it, right? Something inside goes, no, starts to push it away. And you kind of have to just gently override that a little bit and go, what happens if I move towards this thing with a curiosity? And it's very, very different. You can experience any phenomenon at all, even intense physical pain, without any suffering this way.
And that would be feeling the intense physical pain would be going into the sensation.
Yeah, just not expecting yourself to like it. You'd still prefer it to be gone, but not rejecting it either. Like, what actually is this? Do I actually know what it is? Pain is just a word, a four-letter word, right? That we stamp on something.
Mhm.
And do we actually know what it is? So just bring in some curiosity to it as much as you can. Practice beforehand as well, things that you are not so challenging.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So we'll finish with Shiva. Perfect.
Yeah. Hi, Helen.
Hi,
Nice to see you.
nice to talk to you.
Yeah. So, mine is a simple question. So basically, my question is like, is ego conscious of itself? Like, so people say like, ego is a trickster. Like, if it knows like you are trying to meditate, it knows that you are trying to end it, and it will play various tricks to like deviate you from the path. So my question is like everyone talks ego as something which has knowledge and it knows what it is doing. So is it conscious intelligence? Is ego is a conscious intelligence or is just an unconscious chatter? So that's my question.
It's a really good question. Ultimately, everything is the conscious intelligence of the real self, even the egoic sense of self, right? Even that. But it's got so contracted in its capacity to, it's very limited in its capacity to perceive anything. It can only really, at least ego in the way I'm using that word, it's a collection of thoughts, a thought structure. It's an interconnected net of thoughts that is constantly trying to sustain itself by associating meanings to things, right? This means that, okay, that means that, and it's going around. You can kind of feel how it does that. So technically speaking, it is the intelligence of the infinite self. But the moment that infinite self takes any form, the form in itself has lost the sentience. It doesn't have the actual shape. So my body in and of itself isn't intelligent. It couldn't figure out these words. It's the life force, the infinite self moving through it that is the intelligence, right? So it's one of those paradoxical answers. Ego is aware and unaware at the same time, intelligent and not intelligent at the same time. Intelligent because it is made of the infinite self, but not intelligent or sentient because it's made itself into a shape and then it's limited by that shape.
So like I always had that example. If I eat an ice cream, and the thought comes, oh, it's very tasty. Like basically it's the ego which is doing the comment, right? It's very tasty. So does it oh the ice cream is tasty?
What if the infinite self that you are is enjoying the ice cream and it uses the ego to say, "Oh, that's tasty,"
It's possible.
right? The more conscious you become of yourself, the infinite self, the more the egoic sense of self becomes a vehicle for the infinite self to express itself. Mainly at first it's ego going around doing its thing, but more and more the real you is becoming aware of itself, like a sleeping giant waking up and starting to really enjoy the ice cream. So before it would be, this is really tasty, but I shouldn't be eating it because I'm going to put weight on and I won't want my dinner later. And why did I say yes to this thing I didn't want? On and on it goes. And now it's just like, oh, this is really tasty. Right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks, Helen. Yeah, that's it I have.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good to talk to you. Thank you. Okay, so we will leave it there for today. Thank you for all your really intelligent questions you've sent in and asked here today. Each person's question is really all of our question, right? And we learn so much from every question and answer. And the power of satsang is there's only one of us, but that one being can experience itself through all these individual body minds and evolve so much faster, wake up so much quicker. It's just beautiful how that happens. So thank you. Namaste.